If you enjoy what we do on these podcasts, please go to mwpnews.com. There you can see articles about some of the movies we've seen, some things that we don't talk about on podcasts, and links to ways you can support the show. Thank you. Good afternoon from my very loud car, because it is cold out, and I don't know what it is about cars that they get very, melodramatic about the cold. Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. We are here today for a very special occasion. It is the first time we will be talking about something officially in the new DC universe. For the first time, because the new DC universe is officially beginning with Creature Commandos, which came out the first 2 episodes yesterday. And I think the show is great. I do really enjoy the show. I think the very beginning of it, where we get the introduction of Cersei, and I think it's the brothers of Cersei, or the sons of Cersei, or whatever, who are these men's rights activists who are pissed off that Themyscira is for women only, so she's manipulating them to use them as a weapon. That's all really cool, and I think it's a nice way to kind of set yourself apart from what Snyder was doing, where we don't really talk about it enough, but when we talk about the culture wars of the mid to late 2010s, and even into the beginnings of the 2020s, the Marvel versus DC dichotomy became kind of the conservative versus the liberal, where it was what Snyder was selling was a very traditionally conservative viewpoint, especially with their use of superheroes and Christian iconography, and it became glommed onto by the conservatives. And then when that stuff started turning to shit, it became kind of a flashpoint for them, which is why there is this weird kind of, the Snyder, the restore of the Snyderverse thing has this weird right-wing kind of, bent to it. And to that end, it's this leading off with this is kind of a full-throated, we're different, this is not what we're looking at. We're not looking at the same world. And I think that's a very smart move going into going into what this will be. Now, the question that I have is, and I think, too, it's the second episode I also really enjoyed, especially the thing I enjoyed most, I think, of these 2 episodes is the backstory of the bride and her, whole thing. It feels very poor things in her exploration of who she is and how she becomes who she is under Victor Frankenstein. And yes, there is a romantic aspect, and I think that's interesting in terms of, Frankenstein himself, the monster himself. And I think that's kind of the interesting place we are here with this, where, again, this feels like we're going to have Task Force M be taking on Cersei, but I feel like we're going to be dealing with the monster as kind of someone who's pretty big as a villain in this. And I think that could be an interesting kind of, again, look at Suicide Squad 2016 and kind of right the wrongs of that, if that's the case. Now, that said, there are a few things that I'm not overly enthusiastic about. I think that, now let's talk about this purely from a world building standpoint and what we can glean about the new DCU based on these 2 episodes. Number 1, I think it's fairly clear that we're going to be in an in media res DC universe. I mean, that was always the case because we knew Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad would be canon. We didn't know how canon until this episode. I think that's kind of my problem. But the idea that everything is as explicitly happened as in the movie, and then most of what happened in Peacemaker is canon, it does kind of lead you to this place where we're in an interesting kind of place. That said, it is kind of a snake eating its own tail. What do they call that? An Ouroboros, I think is what they call it, if I remember correctly from Loki. It's the snake eating its own tail. It is, let's trace back Suicide Squad. and all of that through the last few years. I feel like that's a worthwhile endeavor here. So Peacemaker is the thing that leads directly into this, because Waller directly addresses that in the beginning. Okay, I can't use inmates anymore, human inmates, who were convicted of crimes on my task forces, because Leota came out and exposed what I was doing with Task Force X. For obvious reasons, this led to people not being willing to have not being willing to be okay with just conscripting, for a multitude of reasons, supervillains and having them go and do this. There are plenty of reasons why this is a dumb idea. So after all of that, the point that comes in after this is what... Excuse me, I still have that cough. What does this mean for, how we're going to run things in this new DC universe? If we're going to be in this world of that, we're going to explicitly tie it back. That show spins out of The Suicide Squad, which is the movie that Gunn directed, and it came out back in 2021 during the pandemic, while theaters were still not quite reopened yet. And its box office was marred by, number one, COVID. Number two, it was marred by the fact that this is inherently tied to Snyder's universe, because you get the return of Rick Flag, who originated in Suicide Squad. You get the return of Amanda Waller. You get the return of Harley Quinn. And this movie is a sequel to, Birds of Prey, and it's a sequel to, the other one, Suicide Squad. You get Captain Boomerang back, and there are, there's quite a few times in that movie that they tie it back explicitly to Suicide Squad. Now, Suicide Squad made almost $1 billion, or it broke $1 billion, I don't remember which. It was in that billion ballpark, where it was like around that same time you also had Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was also not great, but also got close to $1 billion. I mixed up the two. I know the one was 2014, one was 2016, but I mixed up which was the one that broke $1 billion, which is the one that didn't. I think this one broke $1 billion. But regardless, the point I'm trying to make is this movie comes out and does a lot of money, but I don't think a lot of people really remember a good amount of what it was that leads to the creation of the Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad in the DCEU was created by Amanda Waller's fears after Batman v Superman and after Man of Steel. We have these aliens coming, and they keep coming, and Superman is dead. We don't have someone to protect against threats that are coming from outer space and these metahuman threats on Earth. We need to create a team of people that can stop them. And that's what, Suicide Squad is about. It's a shitty movie, and I don't think it's directly David Ayer's fault. I think there was some armchair editing that happened after the fact in an effort to, fix it for release, and then just made it infinitely worse than it would have been if they just let Ayer do what Ayer wanted to do. But regardless, that's what that movie is. And when you look back at what the Suicide Squad, really, is beginning to end, that is, it is so deeply seeped in the world of Batman v Superman that you cannot extricate the two. It is so deeply ingrained in the Snyderverse. Like, there is so much Batman in that movie. But let's say, for example, we want to just ignore that, and we're going to go just based on, the 2021 Suicide Squad, which you can't, because Harley's a major player in both, and Harley originates in the 2016 one. But let's just play devil's advocate here for a second and say, okay, we're going to ignore the 2016 Suicide Squad. We're going to ignore Captain Boomerang being captured by Ezra Miller's Flash. We're going to ignore that this Harley Quinn has a deep history with Ben Affleck's Batman. We're going to ignore all of that. You can't really extricate the 2021 Suicide Squad from the DCU either. Because if I remember correctly, And I haven't watched that movie in quite some time, but was that the movie where Superman is too busy to do Project Starro or Project Starfish? Is that the movie, or is that what's it called, or is that one of the other ones? Either way, it's like this is a movie that is very, deeply kind of ingrained. Now, regardless of that, one of the leads of this movie is Bloodsport. Bloodsport is Idris Elba's character. He's playing this guy who's an assassin or a sharpshooter who attempted to kill Superman with a kryptonite bullet. And that's his entire thing. He tries to kill Superman with a kryptonite bullet. He got captured. He gets put in jail. And that's where Amanda Waller gets him from. And that is explicitly in the movie. He tried to kill Superman with a kryptonite bullet. So there is a Superman in this world. Already. Because this is 2 years after Suicide Squad, that at some point before that, there was a Superman who got shot at by a kryptonite bullet. By Bloodsport. So, okay, we're gonna maybe we said that line was wrong, but then why is he in jail? And here's the issue. I'm being overly dramatic about this. I understand that, and I'm someone who knows the lore. I would say more than the average person. I'm someone who, for this podcast, and we've been doing this podcast since Batman v Superman came out. I mean, before that, we started in 2015, but we've been doing this for 10 years. Come August. So we've been at this for as long as we've been, we've been dealing with this level of the DCEU. So this idea that we're going to extricate them, fine. We're going to extricate them. We're going to extract one from the other. We're going to do, what's what I'm looking for here? We're dealing with building a new universe. And that's the thing, is that, okay, the average person may not know that James Gunn is going to be directly involved with this. The average person may not know, okay, James Gunn is not just writing this show and writing Superman, but James Gunn is also the Kevin Feige, for lack of a better word, of the new DC universe. Okay, if that's where we are and that's what's going on here, that's fine. But the issue is the average person is not going to understand that. The average person's not going to understand that. They're going to see these same characters that we've seen over and over again and be like, oh, so this is just a reboot but with more of the same. And it's going to muddy the waters in a way that is really an unforced error for this new universe. Put it like this. We have seen, since the Suicide Squad, the two characters we've seen the most are Harcourt. I want to say it's Amelia Harcourt or Emily Harcourt or something like that, and John Economos are the two we've seen the most. They were in every episode of Peacemaker. They were in the Suicide Squad, and then Harcourt shows up in the middle of Black Adam, and Economos and Harcourt both show up in the post-credit of Shazam! Fury of the Gods. They're the characters we have seen the most, and they're serving almost a Nick Fury role for Argus, where they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in this power vacuum post-Peacemaker. It's easy enough to discard that now and be like, oh, well, that's not canon. Okay, fine, that's not canon. But the people who see it in the theater and then they see them show up again, serving fundamentally that same role, if they show up in Superman or if they show up here, it's just going to be confusing. And again, we don't have to confuse people any more than they're already going to be by this. And that's fundamentally kind of my problem here. Is that, yes, you're starting a new universe. And I understand that. The people who are watching this show on release day are understanding that. People who are watching this in advance of Superman in July will understand that. But fundamentally, there's going to be a vast swath of the general movie-going public who will not understand this. And they're going to say, oh, we know these people. Oh, these are the people from the old one. Oh, I didn't like that. And that's fundamentally where we're going to be stuck in the situation where it's like, well, why are we dealing with the same thing over and over again? Why is that where we are? And I think that is an essential question that needs to be addressed. And I think that, like, look, I get it. You want to use what worked and you don't want to use what didn't. I think there is absolute merit in that. I do not think that with what we think of the movie-going public, historically, the general audience cannot understand these things. And I think that's something that's going to be woefully lost on them. But the show is great, and I think that's something that I don't want to get lost in the conversation. The show itself is fantastic. Go watch Creature Commandos. See, it's beautifully animated. I love the dynamic of the team. The entire thing with the bride through the first 2 episodes is really fun. Not fun, that's the wrong word, but it's really entertaining, and the story is engaging. That's all great. I love the dynamic between Dr. Phosphorus and everyone else. He's really fun. I could do without Weasel. And I think G.I. Robot in the first episode has a few really great standout moments that make him, an interesting character, even if he's not really doing too much. And I think there's going to be a fun moment later on involving him, but we'll see. Check it out. It's on Max. It's very much worth your time. Our next episode of this will be tomorrow morning. We'll be talking about Blitz. We'll also tomorrow we're going to be doing, I think, Flow. Well, we will be doing a movie in the near future. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.